Good evening. Welcome to DiversiTV Season 4. I'm your host, Mark Harris, and I'll be introducing our guests tonight. If you are tuning in to DiversiTV for the first time, welcome. We're going to have a pretty special show tonight. One of the things that I do in my alter incarnation is be the only full-time alcohol and drug person in the state of Oregon operating at a community college, which, considering the need, is pretty interesting. It's always been subject to comment for me. So tonight's topic is on disability issues, and since the Americans with Disability Act has been amended to cover addictions of all kinds as a disability, it's apropos because, you know, it's interesting being the only A&D person in the community college system that I actually haven't in 4 seasons of DiversiTV even focused on recovery as a disability issue. But again, you know, since we actually do have a class where we actually talk about that, and a lot of people have seen me, it seems, you know, it would be easy to overlook it. So just if you're not seen DiversiTV before, just to show you what our mission is, go to slide, gentlemen. Our mission is to illuminate everyday diversity issues and give the mic and the camera to those who don't always get it. And so to that end, our schedule usually starts out classically looking at ethnicity as one of the differences. And so oftentimes we focus, the first show is usually with natives, as it was this season, then Anglo, Africans in America, Latino, hip-hop, GLBT QQIT, which stands for gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, two-spirit. Oh, transgender, two-spirit. Today we're looking at disability. Next week we'll look at youth issues, and finals week we'll look at class. Tonight my guest is Michael Ratiff, who is a counseling department Student Services Associate. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
So where are you from, and where did you grow up?
I grew up in Seattle, and yeah, that's, you know, Seattle, Washington. It was nice. I was a kid, you know, just living in the projects, doing what kids do.
In the CD?
Well, actually, I lived in the Terrace.
Okay. All right. So,
yeah, you know, just that's where it started. That's where I was, and yeah, it's funny when I think about it. It's been a long time, but you know, I've been back there several times, and it's not even the same. It's not.
Better, worse, same.
Well,
old,
you
same
know,
old?
it's the Harborview Medical Center.
Harborview. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's,
all right.
You know, and it's so huge now. It's like the projects. It's huge, and it's world renowned. So, yeah, it's entirely different. Yeah. A lot of places I used to play, you know, and run around jumping off of bridges because you know, I don't want to tell my age, but I was there during the time when the freeway was just being built. So
well, that definitely dates you.
So, yeah, I used to jump off those cliffs and stuff into that real soft sand. Yeah. You know, yeah. So.
Well, that does take you back because, you know, when I remember, you know, I grew up in L.A., so, you know, when the Santa Monica Freeway, I-10, was just being built, you know, when the only artery, this is all before the interstate system, so that definitely dates us, you know, the north-south artery was, you know, 99 or 101, you know, there was no I-5, you know, definitely no I-10, and being there as a shorty. So how did you come to live in Eugene and come to Lane Community College then? From Seattle. What brought you here?
Well, the truth of the matter is that I didn't really know anything about Eugene, or didn't even know anything about Oregon, really. I got myself in some trouble, had been involved in drugs very heavily, and you know, I kept finding myself in trouble, and I just wanted to, I thought I could do it geographical. And so
geographical cure.
Yeah,
okay.
I thought I could get away and really, it just didn't work like that.
You mean from Seattle to here?
Actually, I went from Seattle to Portland
Okay.
to here.
Okay.
And I just...
Looking for a quieter scene?
Yeah, and lo and behold, I came to Eugene. Yeah. And then when I first came to Eugene was like, if I'm not mistaken, well, my son, he's 12, almost 13, so probably like in, I don't know, 95, 96. So, yeah. And it wasn't that much different than Seattle.
How so?
Well, the drug scene in the West Side, which was at the time used to call Felony Flats, was pretty like, I heard it described as an open air drug market, because you can go anywhere and do anything, and satisfy your cravings. So, being an addict, I just didn't go anywhere. I didn't need to. All my desires and needs were met right in a little, I don't know, maybe 5-10 block radius.
Like where?
Like around 6th and Blair, and that, right in that little area right there. And so, just like I stayed in that area, and the police knew where to find me also. So,
Well, you would tend to stick out.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I did for. I did that for a while, and during that period, a couple things happened for me that really changed my life, and one of them was my mother passed away, and that was the time in my life where I actually, knew what it felt like to be alone, and even I have brothers and sisters and uncles and aunts and cousins, but you only have one mother.
Yeah.
And, I actually felt her spirit leave me, so that loneliness. And I couldn't do anything about that emptiness that I felt, and the drugs didn't work. It just seems like
you were thinking about the drug, as we say in the trade, self-medicating for that emptiness.
Oh yes, and I tried. I don't know. It just would not leave. I just could not get rid of that feeling, and so it was really, really painful. And as I think about it now, I don't think that I've ever gotten rid of that feeling. That's just, I still understand it. It's just that now that I've been sober for a while and clean for a while, that I'm able to have a more emotional maturity about it. So now it's more acceptance about the fact that there's nothing I can do about that. So yeah, it was. But then what happened was, that emptiness seemed to return when my child was born. And so that's one of the cornerstones of my recovery, was knowing that regardless of what I needed to do, that I needed to be a good father, and that I couldn't be a good father teaching my child what my father taught me. So I made a decision to seek help. And
when you say your father taught you, what was that example? What do you mean by that?
Well, my father was a criminal. My father was he was a drug addict. He was a hustler, and his father before him.
Multi-generational.
Oh yes, very much so. Okay. My grandfather used to brag to me about not ever having a Social Security card. So, he never worked a day in his life. So, I had that mindset, but I realized that wasn't me. I was trying to live an image, or try to live the way that I was supposed to be, not the way that I actually felt. And so once I broke away from that, and I was down here in Eugene and by myself and lonely, and now I have a child that I have to be a father to, I was willing to really accept the fact that I didn't know what I was doing. That's when real humility came in, when I just said, you know what, and I, basically asked God for help, said, I don't know what to do, you know. And this is the, you know, the love that I never thought that I would have again was what I received from my son, you know. So I made the decision that I didn't know how to live life clean and sober. I had been using heroin since I was 12, and I didn't quit using heroin until I was 42. And so what I learned was that during that time is that I didn't learn anything. I didn't learn any social skills. I didn't learn anything about, you know, intimacy. I didn't learn anything about, you know, honesty and being receptive to somebody else's wisdom. So what I did was I just, I raised my hand, you know, and asked for guidance, and I allowed somebody else to guide me. And it just so happens here in Eugene, there wasn't, you know, the black role models that I was looking for in recovery. Right. So I had to seek help from, you know, my sponsor right now, you know, who just had everything that I wanted. And then more than anything, what I wanted was, you know, I wanted to feel, I wanted to live. I didn't necessarily want a brand new house or car or anything like that. I just wanted to be okay. And, you know, and he taught me that by, you know, taking me to, you know, 12-step meetings and showing me different ways to live. And so, you know, and I still call him today regularly about almost anything that I just want to talk about. And, you know, it's been working for the last, you know, 9 years. It's been working.
So if, our viewers at home can do the math, you know, because you were being coy about your age, but I have to give you the quote that my grandma talked about, you know, people our age, right? Good black don't crack. Because, you know, when you get upwards towards that, you know, half a century thing, right? And, you know, since a lot of us don't necessarily make it past that age or even up to that age, I mean, that was one of the things, you know, I mean, coming from LA, you know, with different circumstances, but, you know, actually kind of, you know, almost a mirror of the circumstances where, you know, the only work I've done here is as an addictions counselor, one way or the other, right? And so dealing, you know, having a certain perspective where, you know, you're trying to, like, you know, meet people like you in high school or whatever, and like trying to say, okay, look, there's another way, right? You know, like there's a reason, you know, because I lived in Whitaker, you know, before the time that you got there, right? And so, you know, I'm working for Whitebird, and they're saying, you know, and I'm commenting about, okay, I hear gunshots at night, which, you know, okay, no big deal. You know, police cruisers, you know, I'm from LA, no big deal. And I grew up with LAPD, and Eugene was mellow, and they say, where do you live? And I said, oh, 3rd and Jackson. Oh, Felony Flats. Felony Flats? What are you talking about? Yeah. Oh, well, that's the ghetto of Eugene. Ghetto? It's like they ain't hardly no people of color. And the only people of color that were there was the infamous Charles family, that, you know, the Native American family that, you know, everybody was scared of, and I was okay with them. You know, they were okay with me, you know. But I'm going, what do you mean? This is, you know, the so-called ghetto. I mean, where I'm from, ghettos do not have lawns. They do not have cherry trees. You know, I mean, the train thing, you know, every night, that, you know, that was kind of quaint. But yeah, there did seem to be a scene there for some reason.
Yes.
And, you know, working at Whitebird, I was just wondering, wait a minute, now Eugene is smaller than my neighborhood in Los Angeles. I mean, Los Angeles has more homeless people today than there are people in Eugene. So for me, it's and you're from Seattle and Portland. This is a small town.
Right.
So how is there, you know, coming to be a big major drug scene here for people to get caught up in, you know? Because you talked about doing a geographic, right? You know, moving from Seattle to Portland, you know, there's a hood in Portland.
Right.
You know, still you can get hooked up, but then you know, come down to Eugene where you think is going to be mellower, and you can get hooked up again. And
yes, and it's it's really hard to put your finger on, but Eugene seems to be like, I remember, there was a person that was arrested at the Hilton with like, I don't know, 10 kilos of China white heroin.
mm-hmm.
So
the original China white.
yes, like back in the day.
Yeah,
China
number
white.
4 Asian heroin. Yeah.
And so you have to ask yourself, why in a small town like Eugene? Well, the truth of the matter is that was it's pretty major as far as, the methamphetamine scene.
Mm-hmm.
So when it becomes like methamphetamine, the way it moved across the country and the way it's like just blossomed, then money is money.
Right.
So people come where the money is.
Right.
And so.
And the drug, it should be said, the drug scene flows where the money is too.
Yes.
And so, when you think about, well, I'm glad that you're saying this and we're saying this together because, when I've said it, they go, oh, no. Well, yeah, I've worked for the feds, U.S. Department of Education feds, not the cops. But, basically because it's Department of Education, we have access to the federal data. So, my job was to analyze these trends for, as an urban strategist. Right. So, Seattle, Portland, Oakland, Berkeley, and L.A. And so the connection for those 5 cities was that they all have international airports. They're all seaports.
Yes.
Okay? They're all connected to the I-5 corridor.
Right.
Right. And so the drug infrastructure basically follows the money and also follows the pipeline. Right. So it was never about just Mexicans, so to speak, bringing heroin up the I-5 corridor. No, there's not enough Mexicans to supply the drug habits of the good white folk of Eugene. Sorry. There is airports, and you were talking about somebody bringing in 10 keys of China white. That's serious money, serious weight. Okay.
Yeah.
Regular business person, right? And I mean all white business person, because that's who is controlling that up. And so one of the things that we look at then when you're talking about coming to here and you within your particular biological family, multi-generational, role modeling, right? And then you come here and then you would fit a certain profile, just like I got profiled.
Right.
Like, oh, well, get stopped in my my beater hoopty and, can I see your license and registration? Sure. Have you ever been arrested? Yeah, I was arrested once when I was 17. 17 arrests?
Yeah.
No. What was that for? Theft? Wow. Okay. So, and that was in Whitaker, right? And so, interrogating the cop later, years later, she said, "Oh, well, the stereotype was, okay, you're a black man, beater car, Whitaker. You must have just gotten released from prison. You must be an addict. You must have done burglaries." I was wearing my White Bird T-shirt coming from the softball game. Like, wait a minute. You think I got that from the free box? What was this about? But again, looking at kind of like the infrastructure, the scene here, when you basically started, getting in recovery, 9 years in recovery. Congratulations. That's like edging up to long-term recovery, as we say in the trade. What made you come to school?
Well, I used to work a fairly good job. I used to work at Monaco, and I have a very outgoing personality, and in the business of production, that's not really acceptable behavior. Yeah. To be socializing, even though my job I never once did not complete my task. In fact, I had the kind of attitude to where I was so grateful for the job and the money that I enjoyed going to work. I enjoyed just, not only being free and being clean, but then having decent money. But, I have my son in my life, You know, I was being a good father. I was being a good role model. So I was continuously living, you know, in that pink cloud.
Hmm.
And so what happened was, you know, some things came about with my son's mother, where she felt threatened by my relationship with my child, and you know, threatened to take my child. So it really sent me in a tailspin. So what I did, though, was I realized that, you know, I'm not a young man anymore, and I didn't, you know, even though I made decent money, and you know, I had a type of job where they were sending me all over the United States. You know, I was going to different places working on coaches for, you know, a couple years before I decided to leave. Mm. But what I really knew was that I didn't know any real knowledge. I didn't have any real knowledge. I didn't have a degree behind my name. I had life experience, and I feel like, you know, being in the position that I'm in, that when I talk to somebody about recovery and I talk to somebody about being clean, they know that I know exactly what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. But when you work for an agency or try to work for a bureaucracy,
right,
or when you ask for funding,
right,
to try to establish these type of facilities,
right,
they want to see some credentials.
Yes, they do.
So I knew that I had to start somewhere.
Fortunately or unfortunately, they do.
Yes.
They want to know that you can play the game, or that you can spout the science, as it were, right?
So,
you know, because you've identified in terms of your, you know, your recovery. So you're in NA.
Yes.
Right. And your drug or drugs of choice was heroin.
Yes.
Okay. So when so you're basically here to get trained in terms of doing A&D work, or
yes,
what?
alcohol and drug counseling.
Okay.
That's exactly what I'm in. Human services major. I hope to get my ADAC, my alcohol and drug counseling certificate, and right now I'm also in the process of getting a transfer degree, so I can get the alcohol and drug certificate before I get the transfer degree, so I could actually be practicing in the field, work in a co-op or a service learning position before I actually get a degree. So that's, you know, my plan.
Okay. So what does an SSA do, and what do your duties entail, and how do you weave recovery into that?
Being of service.
Okay.
Being, you know, I've learned that I'm the best person, and my true self is being of service to others. That's when I feel the most that sense of you know, I'm trying to figure out the word, but just where I have that the blessings that I receive when I work with somebody else, and I'm honest about helping them and being respectful, and, you know, putting myself in a position to be of help to somebody else. Well, at SSA, that's my job. You know, I'm really in the information business. And what I do is I keep information, and I use the same type of abilities that I learned, you know, selling and using drugs. And that is remembering faces and remembering, you know, likes and dislikes, and, you know,
niche marketing.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
What people need and what they don't need. And then, you know, you get information, you know, that comes across your desk, and then you remember somebody, you know, a couple of days ago was looking for that.
Yeah.
So when you're out, you see them, you let them know that same information that they were looking for is now available. You know, it works. You know, and then also works, you know, because I work with some staff that, you know, gave me the opportunity. So, you know, all the way around, it's just one of those things where it just fits my personality, because I like being of service. I like helping people, and, you know, it's a total contrast to the way I used to be. So, you know, I get to do what I like.
Well, what you were talking about, you know, I was just thinking about, okay, this is niche marketing, heroin sales is, a narrow casting to a particular market, about, hey, we got that number, yada, yada, to, basically doing social marketing in terms of education.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, the skill sets are very similar, even though the aims are different.
Right. And I'm not so much worried about myself. I'm more worried about being of service and helping somebody else. And I've learned that, my needs will be met. And I've it's been happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the beauty of it. It's been happening. So.
So, I guess the way of asking this question, in terms of, if you grew up essentially in an African American context,
right,
and you had certain life role models, and so now you have, as you pointed out, as we were talking about before, we went on the air,
right.
There ain't that many black people in Eugene, and there ain't that many black people in recovery in Eugene.
Right.
And, certainly I know after, practicing in this state for, since that's the only work that I've ever done, sooner or later, everybody in alcohol and drug knows everybody else. So even though I'm a normie, I know some of those names that, that you know of in terms of being up there in terms of, recovery years. So, how do you feel about the attitude towards in African Americans towards African Americans in recovery? How do you notice a difference? Do you notice a level of respect or suspicion, or what do you notice about that in that particular group?
I believe that I'm highly respected in the black community, because people know that I come from a position of sincerity, that I'm that I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't victimize, I don't steal, I don't hurt people, and that speaks for itself. Mm-hmm. And what people, and I tell you, one of the biggest things I think that people really, really comment to me about is that my attitude is one of, I believe that things are going to be okay.
Yeah.
That I'm, for the most part, I'm happy. I enjoy, living life. And so that's something that's rarity. And I didn't realize how rare it was until you're around, an abundance of people and find out they wondering why you laughing.
And it ain't laughing to keep from crying. It's actually laughing because it's funny.
Because I'm enjoying myself. Yeah. I'm really getting a chance to live the life that I thought, I get to live the way that I thought I needed to live when I was using. Mm. So I found it,
Talk about that some more.
Well, I used to live in fear. I used to live in, a lot of, wondering if I was going to be taken care of, feeling left out, feeling inadequate, knowing I'm a criminal, so I wasn't going to get whatever, So I constantly used to try to find acceptance and try to find, a piece of self or a sense of self by staying high, by staying under the influence. So I didn't have to wonder what you thought about me, because once I'm high, I didn't care.
Yeah.
Well, today, I care about how you think of me, but I know there's nothing I can do about it, so I continue to be myself. I choose to live in my blessing today. I know that God works in my life, and that, like I said before, I may not get everything I want, but I always get what I need. So that in itself is a sense of gratitude. I live in a sense of continuous, I want to say bliss, because I know what my life used to be like.
It wasn't always so.
It wasn't always.
I mean, you basically talked about, hinted at, a criminal past, right? So that fits in with a lot of people's stereotypes of us, right?
Right.
Whether you have actually acted out that mold or not, they think it.
Right.
Right? And so, and if you've had that, and, you basically, because that's one of the things that we'll be dealing with, and, and as you know, in terms of looking at the focus of people coming out of prison who, disproportionately paid their debt to society. And what I mean by disproportionately,
yes.
Okay, it's like, you may have been wheeling and dealing here, but you weren't selling necessarily to black people. Your clientele was mostly white, right?
Yes.
And they weren't going to jail, but you might have gone to jail for feeding their habit, right? Which tended to be the pattern, right? So, just someone is asking me my opinion about, and this is as far as I'm going to get in terms of being political, y'all. All right? But when Mrs. Clinton's husband basically introduced the crime bill, and he said, okay, for most of America, the face of crime is a black face, I'm going, wait a minute. Time out.
Right.
All right. So we've got 30 years of data that are basically showing that the illegal drug, 80%, somewhere between 70 to 80% of the illegal drug users are wealthy white men who make in excess of $50,000. Okay? That's most of the illegal drug users. And that's who's holding up in the Hilton, that person, with 10 pounds of Asian heroin. Selling mostly to who? Who's going to be coming without suspicion to visit you in your Hilton suite? Right? So, and then who is he selling to in terms of doing the street stuff? So when they're talking about the Mexicans or the stereotypical blacks or whatever, who is it that they're selling to? Well, they're selling to white people, right? But who's doing the jail time? Okay, the minorities, right? So not to excuse that, but again, let's look at, the reality of crime in America. So a crime bill that basically doesn't deal with the facts and basically continues to pander to stereotypes is basically maintaining the status quo. Right? So you break that mold even though you fit it at some point, you've gone beyond that. So, there's evidence of redemption there. Right,
and then there's a lot of people, even now, the people that might watch this show that see me all the time may not know that.
Yeah.
Because it's not like something that I advocate. I don't stand up on a pedestal and I talk and say, I'm a convict, drug addict, but I don't shy away from it either. I want people to know that not only am I a recovering addict and, I've committed crimes and I've, done numerous stints in prison, but I'm also a caring, loving person and that I'm willing to help you if I can. And, I don't want to be judged by what I've done. I want to be judged by what I do. So, I keep my head up. And just know that I'm going to have obstacles, but, for the most part, things have really been, and I take my hats off to Lane Community College also, because there's some staff here that actually, that did know about my past and did know about my history, but was willing to take a chance on me, and, I feel like, I'm blessed. So that's why I want other people to know. That's why we're in the process right now of doing some transition stuff for criminals and to work with, people with addiction problems and things like that. Because a lot of times all you need is some type of support.
Yeah.
If you can put yourself in the position where, you're with somebody that understands those cravings and that need and those desires, but yet is saying, you know what, but let's wait and do that a little bit later. Let's do something else right now, and that's usually all it takes. It's just somebody to say, okay, we can still do that later, but let's do something else right now.
Yeah.
That's where the just for the day comes in,
The topic of our show today is disability. So the reason, and I want to kind of bring this out, and I'm going to ask you a hardball question.
Okay.
Okay? So I'm going to draw a parallel that people are going to be disturbed with. Sorry. Oh well. All right? The military is designed to take human beings and destroy their humanity so that they're able to kill other human beings and not feel any way about it at all.
Right.
Okay? And then they go over to Iraq or whatever, and, you know, I'm talking with guys that, you know, have gone over and they've, you know, shot kids because they had plastic guns because they thought it was real, and boom, and they're, you know, they're fathers with kids, and, you know, their nightmares are seeing their kids, you know, and shooting them, right? And that's got to tear you up as a dad, and, you know, we call that PTSD, right? Right? So that's a disability, covered disability, right? And we're dealing with that here at Lane Community College, right? People coming back from the sandbox who are going to be coming back and trying to integrate into society where they can't go from utter boredom to rage easily, right? Prison is designed to destroy your spirit. It is designed to do specifically that, to dehumanize you, right? As part of your correction.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, okay, you did a crime, you did time, and so we're going to control you up, and then boom, we're destroying your spirit so that when you get out, we even set it up so that you don't come out of that a whole person. You're more likely to repeat that experience. So you've gone through that experience. How come prison didn't destroy your spirit? How do you bring your spirit back from that experience? You've been inside that. Because you don't strike me as being a victim here. Far from it.
Wow.
See, and that's a piece that, okay, we got to teach people.
Right.
Right? I mean, so the basic question is, okay, you went through this experience that was designed to destroy your spirit.
Right.
And it didn't break you.
And one of the things that I honestly believe is what works in that is the same thing that I tell people who've been molested or who've been left homeless or who've been actually victimized, who you know, who's been stabbed or hurt or something, is that
all of which are things that happen to you in prison or that you witnessed in prison or hear people tell you in prison, and it doesn't necessarily give you the best view of the human race, you know?
Yeah. And so what happens is you have to, at least I just say, for me, as I told myself that these things happened and that I have to acknowledge that they did happen.
Yeah, right.
But I ask myself all the time is that now what do I do with it? Do I stay bound by my past or the things that I did, or by the morals that I stand there, or the boundaries that I established when I was 12 at 40,
right?
Or do I readjust them to live life the way I want to live it?
Right.
And the way I want to live it is I want to be happy. I want to be in a position to where I can accept feedback and don't, or
don't blow up about it.
Right. And accept constructive criticism because I know I don't know. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Once I accept the fact that I am not the guy, you know, or the man, then I'm just well, I'm not young anymore, but I'm just a black man, you know, trying to learn how to live cohesively in society.
Yeah.
And the way that I learn that is through the eyes and hearts of others. And if I always got this exterior, this wall, this tough man, then you're not getting ready to tell me anything.
Right.
Because what I've done is isolated myself, you know? And that's what I've realized is that I don't have to isolate myself, that I can be susceptible, that I can cry, that I can open up and not victimize, that I can have a woman who's my friend without wanting to have sex with her. You see, that I can be a person that is valuable to the community just because I want to be. That's what I choose to be. You know, I tell people all the time, I'm nice because I choose to be nice. You know, and I believe it comes down to a choice. One of the things that, you know, I learned in the treatment facility that I was in was that, you know, we all have choices and things happen all the time. It's just, what do we do with them? Yeah. And I just decided that I'm not going to be bound by that. Right. You know, and it's like, hey, there's too much living, too much fun, too much life that I want to experience that I'm, you know, because I know in my heart that if it came down to it, I could be vicious, you know, but that's not something that I have to practice. Yeah. You know, so.
So you you could say you successfully went through treatment in this state.
Yes.
Okay.
And they discontinued the program. Yes, and I have to really.
Don't even get me started on that one. But,
okay. Yeah. That's a true statement.
Well, okay. Yeah. Because, you know, some of our friends, our mutual friends in the trade.
Right.
You know, name drop, you know, Harrison Daniely, Harry Watkins, you know, Watson, you know, people, black people who've got 20, 30, 40 years in recovery. You know, when I went to that African American Treatment Summit in Portland, at Miracles, okay? So, you know, the eight brothers, they basically had collectively 300 years worth of recovery between them. Yeah. 8, right? So one of the things that we talked about in that treatment center is that, you know, being black and being an addict in Oregon is difficult because one of the core issues that you come to deal with in treatment, right up there, you know, one of your core sources of wounding, especially in a state like that, is race. It's just an issue, right? And you have to deal with that. So whether that is, you know, multiple generations of, you know, multi-generational criminality, multi-generational responses to self-medicating, et cetera, all of which has to be addressed in treatment, appropriately addressed in treatment, and frequently is not. So that people go through this whole merry-go-round, the revolving door piece, you know, into prison, into treatment, failed treatment because they're not addressing the core issues, back into prison, et cetera, et cetera. So that when you get a treatment agency that is, you know, done by us, you know, so like shout out to Sister Olivia, you know, at Project Network, you know, who they're not just seeing black women there coming out of prison, but also white women too and other people of color as well. And one of the key things that she talked about is, okay, it's not what happened to, it's not that there's something wrong with you. It's what happened to you that you have to look at and acknowledge, you know, as part of the healing process. Right? Not making excuses, but yes, racism is a factor. And basically, if you're not addressing that, okay, you're a mainstream program and you are doomed to fail. Right. Consequently, if you went through treatment that's effective, ironically, it's the effective treatment programs, and I wish I was paranoid. I really wish I was.
I know.
Okay?
I know.
It's the effective treatment programs that get shut down, and the ineffective ones that are actually doing damage that are maintained.
Yes.
So you found that to be true, too.
Oh, I have the statistics. I have in black and white the success rate. Yeah. And we're talking like 45, 50% success rate, which is really unheard of.
Yes.
You know.
That's high because most treatment agencies, you know, last time I checked, it was like 31, 32. Yeah. If that.
And then I know like 45 or 50 other people that went through treatment that have longer clean time than I do, that are now like pillars of the NA community, that are like, that work in some of the renowned agencies in our community because they were a product of that program. But yet the funding wasn't available. And the funding that what it was they diverted it to the jail.
Oh, oops.
Yes, and it's all there in black and white. So
The same jail that's releasing rapists, huh? Okay.
Yeah. So
let's not get too political.
yeah, we're not. But it's those are just the realities that we have to deal with.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I feel that is my responsibility is to let people know that there is something that can be done. That there is
treatment that works.
That
right?
works.
Yeah.
And not only that works, but I am living proof that it does. Yeah. Yeah, I really, and I like sharing what I've learned.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is that it's okay to be respectful. It's okay to be caring. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to just be, allow your humanistic abilities and just life just flow from you. It's okay.
So you're being trained, and your ultimate goal is to run a treatment agency.
Yes.
Okay. So let's say you, how would you basically create you in treatment? How would you set up treatment so that it produced people like you? I mean, you seem to have a successful and healthy identity, right?
Right.
Some of which was forged in treatment.
Right.
In a treatment program that no longer exists. So let's say that you want to recreate that. What are some of the elements to do that?
Is being responsible for your own actions,
Okay.
Not blaming, being honest about what really is going on, not this, figment in your head, or not this grandiose idea, because a lot of the people that I deal with.
Well, break that down for you as an example with what you've already talked about. What
Well,
would that look like?
Well, what that would look like is that, I was a drug addict, period. Regardless of what happened between using,
Yeah.
I was a drug addict.
Yeah.
That was my desire, the finding and, ways and means to get more, period. And so therefore, there wasn't a question of any type of life or lifestyle. It was all about the drugs. That is the reality of it. And so there's a lot of people that feel like, they had the best women or they had the best cars and they had the best place and their money and all that. But when it came down to it, all they wanted was to use. And that was just, a means to get more. So those are realities.
So you put down the needle, you put down the pipe, whatever. Then you're faced with an incredible amount of pain. Who wants to look at that?
I think you have to go through that. I think that's part of it. I think that's where the emotional maturity comes in, is that everybody deals with pain.
Yeah.
It's just that it's been my experience that the addict doesn't want to deal with being uncomfortable.
Right.
So that's why they self-medicate. But what I found out is once you deal with being uncomfortable successfully the first time, the second time, it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
And you're able to deal with it effectively the more that you do deal with it. So you're actually like a product of your own success. The more you live life on life terms, the more you're able to live life. So that's my experience.
So confronting people with, the reality of their pain, the reality that you're going to be uncomfortable, that there is fear, but, fear is an indicator that you're getting closer to your true self.
Yes.
Right? And if you're afraid of yourself, well, okay, you need to look at that. Because when you finally meet you, the pain disappears. But until you get to that point,
And that's another thing, is actually loving yourself, is looking at yourself every day and looking at yourself, knowing all the things that you've done, all the things that you've been through, and still love yourself. And when you love in yourself, you don't put, things in your body are going to be harmful.
Yeah.
You don't put yourself in a position where, you might have to be hurt. You just don't do that. You don't speed, You don't drive a car 90 miles an hour. You know, you're not going to take a chance of hurting yourself if you really love yourself. And then you just live a healthier lifestyle. I think, at least that's what's happening for me, is that I'm finding out that, I'm able to give myself a pat on the back, to give myself the nutrient that I never received. And because, I surround myself with the people who I know that are my friends. And so not only are they able to keep me in check, but I'm able to get from them, the love and the nutrient that I've always wanted, and I lacked when I was a child. So I learned to do that.
And you're able to give that as a father in return.
That's the part. The part that I'm finding out more and more is that I still parent with fear. And I'm learning, man, to just sit on my hands and just trust the process. Because, my son, he's going to be all right. I don't have to get in his way. A lot of times I want to get in the way, and that's my own fears. And so I'm learning.
That is always the trick with them.
Yes.
Yeah. You hope there's going to be an evolution, that you won't necessarily, maybe you parent the way you were parented. Maybe you parent better than the way you were parented, and certainly your parents want you to parent better than they parented you.
Right.
Yeah. And so as long as there is an evolutionary process, the clean and sober piece goes a long way towards that. Yeah. Because if you didn't have that role modeling, then, you didn't
that's
know
the
what
beautiful
that was.
thing. Is that my son, my son never saw me, loaded. I think I'm so grateful for that, that he's always, saw me being productive and being, caring. And that's, I want him.
With a Social Security card.
Yeah.
With a job.
Yeah. Yeah. He's always, those are the things that he saw.
Yeah.
And right now he's, he is so stubborn that it's beautiful, that I love him for being stubborn. It's just that I just hope, that he doesn't keep looking at me as being the enemy, because he wants to be stubborn against me. And I laugh because I'm trying to tell him, I'm not the enemy. I love you, So, yeah, it's a trial and error.
Well, that could be that function of the teenager thing.
Yeah, and that's what I was there.
They hate you until they get past a certain age, and then they realize grudgingly you were correct. But yeah. So, so some of your, if you're going to create, for example, you may get to the point. Actually, you probably will get to the point where you're teaching college yourself. Let me plant that seed in you, okay? Because one of the things in the trade that we look for, okay, there's the street knowledge that you can't teach in a book, right? You got that, right? And so you're getting, cognitive behavioral therapy, like we were talking about in front of the building, right? So, well, okay, where's that mindset coming from? You have to take that apart and put it back together for you in terms of translating. So if you were to create a healthy curriculum for those that come after you, what would it look like or contain, and what would you want people to know?
A healthy curriculum.
Yeah, that incorporates the street knowledge without having to duplicate the street experience, for example.
Oh, you mean people that's a hard one. Because I think there would have to be being able to trust that the people across from you, that, if you were to be in a counseling type situation, that the people across to you are not necessarily bad, That I believe that when they, some of those situations and some of those circumstances, are beneficial if you can learn to learn from them. Because I don't think it's ever bad if you learn a lesson from some of this, this dumb stuff.
As long as you learn the lesson.
Yeah. And And that's the part, I think, that if you learn the lesson and that you stay open-minded, that you will be okay.
Yeah.
You know? So you have to stay open-minded.
Yeah. So, final thoughts?
I'm just glad that, you know, that I get a chance to speak out about, you know, some of the things that I think, because I see the different clients that are coming now, and there's more and more clients that need to know that, you know, they can do this.
Right.
So
you're living proof.
Yeah, I'm glad to be able to do that.
So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So if you like what you've seen, send us feedback because we'll be at live class at lanecc.edu. Because this is definitely going to be an ongoing conversation in terms of looking at what's coming down the pike for Lane Community College. We're basically experiencing a shift not only in funding, but we're also looking at the fact that a harder to reach population, several different kinds of them are coming to them. So we're having to reorient education to be more social service in addition to being education. That's what it's about. People coming from prison, people coming from war, people learning to be human again. So this has been DiversiTV, looking at disability, and we will tune in next week. Thank you for listening and watching. Go well, stay well.